Hello, everybody, and welcome to our April Lunch and Learn. Today we have a very interesting report from Chairman Randy DeFoor, who is the Jacksonville Special Committee on Resiliency. Randy is a fifth-generation Jacksonville native and currently Senior Vice President and National Agency Counsel for Fidelity National Financial, a Fortune 500 company. She earned her bachelor's degree from the University of the South and JD degree from Cumberland School of Law. Randy served as a commissioner of the Jacksonville Economic Development Commission from 2006 to 2012 and currently serves on the Jacksonville International Airport Community Redevelopment Area. She served as a trustee on the boards of Episcopal School of Jacksonville for 12 years and Riverside Presbyterian Day School for 8 years. In 2012, Randy was appointed by Governor Scott to the District Board of Trustees for Florida State College at Jacksonville, where she served a term as chairman. She also serves on the Women's Board of Wolfson Children's Hospital and the Innocence Project of Florida. Randy, it's lovely to have you here today.
Well, thank you so much for having me. And I see some names I recognize, Barbara being one. She was on our Resiliency Committee. And so some of this will be, she'll hear it again of what my presentation, but what a great opportunity to be here with you this morning. It really is an honor. I admire the League of Women's Voters mission to encourage the informed and active participation of citizens in government while increasing understanding of policy issues. We were just discussing before everybody came in about some of the stuff that's going on right now at the state level. And I can tell you that I, for one, look to your organization to find out, what your thoughts are and how does that play out in your opinion, whether it be at the state level or at the local level. Today, we're going to talk about resiliency. I'm going to give you a little background of Jacksonville in and of itself, and then we'll talk about how the Resiliency Committee was put together by the City Council. So as many of you know, Jacksonville was founded on June 15th, 1822. So if you can imagine, we're now looking at 200 years as a birth date coming up, and we're closing in on that number. And many of our historic neighborhoods, such as Riverside and Avondale, which are in my district, were platted and built approximately 100 to 150 years ago, respectively. So the infrastructure in our historic neighborhoods, such as Riverside, Avondale, San Marco, and Springfield, they're old, and in most cases would not meet the recommended stormwater drainage best practices of today. In addition to that, the census in 2018 recorded Jacksonville population was about a little over 900,000. And we know prior to COVID that 84 people per day were moving to Jacksonville. But as many of you might know, since COVID, the data is suggesting that Jacksonville is either number one or number two in terms of relocation areas where people are coming to. So it'll be interesting when we get the data, which will for the 2020 census, which will be in September, as to how much Jacksonville has really grown. Jacksonville has the largest urban park system in the nation and is home to more than 400 city parks, as you know, 7 state parks and 2 national parks. We also, we're the largest city by area in the contiguous United States. We have over 1,100 miles of navigable water, more shoreline than any other city in the nation. That includes over 22 miles of beaches, 40 miles of intercoastal waterway, and the longest stretch of the St. Johns River in the state of Florida. The St. Johns River is central to our identity as a city. It was designated as an American Heritage River by former President Clinton. And the St. Johns is the only river in Florida and one of only 14 rivers in the entire United States to receive this prestigious national recognition. Its health and well-being is essential to the health and well-being to Jacksonville. My education of resiliency has deepened considerably over the last year. The topic is vast, and each subsection has years worth of academia and best practices supporting it. Simply put, resiliency is the ability of a community to bounce back to normal conditions after losing function because of an uncontrollable event, such as a hurricane, extreme heat, high intensity flooding. And that's what we looked at. Now, resiliency could also be, how do you deal with a pandemic like COVID? Resilient communities have the capacity to quickly respond to and withstand and recover from adverse shocks, such as a hurricane and high-intensity flooding events. From a long-term perspective, resilient communities find ways to adapt to changing conditions so that the future losses are minimized and continuing stresses such as aging infrastructure and sea level rise are managed. Jacksonville's tipping point really happened in 2017 with the destruction wrought by Hurricane Irma. Hurricane Irma's track, as you remember, track north allowed for southerly winds to pick up water from the St. Johns and release it in Jacksonville. It was about September 10th of 2017. The storm weakened from a Category 2 to a Category 1 as it passed through Jacksonville overnight. However, heavy rainfall and storm surge overflowed at least 32 rivers and creeks, causing significant flooding. The St. Johns River swelled to historic flood levels with high tide, and the flooding it brought devastated neighborhoods. Search and rescue crews pulled hundreds of people from their homes. And I can tell you, I don't believe that the St. Johns River has gone back down since Irma. I think it's not as high, obviously, as it was during the storm, but it's certainly, it hasn't gone down to pre-Irma levels. And it's not hard to see. If you go over any of these bridges, you can see that for yourself. What was the economic impact of Irma? The storm left more than 250,000 people without power. More than 3,000 people sought shelter in city shelters. It took months to clear the debris from the storm. Some homes still have not been fixed. The total damage estimated for Hurricane Irma exceeds $77 million. Other impacts included the determination that 93% of all small businesses in Florida were in a federally disaster declared county following Irma. According to the state, $26 billion of residential property in Florida will be at risk of chronic flooding by 2045. Our flagship park is Memorial Park, and it's in my district. And this is how it looks on a regular day. The park was designed by the famed Olmsted brothers, who designed Biltmore Estate and Central Park in New York almost a century ago. In the background of this picture, you can see the river, and there is a 5-foot drop behind the historic Bull Straits to get down to the water level. This is the park during Hurricane Irma. This picture was taken by local photographer Mark Crancer and was nominated by a Pulitzer Prize. The waves have come up and over the river railing and are crashing into the park. The Bull Straits were destroyed, and actually they're right now, finally, that happened in 2017. We're just now replacing the Bull Straits in the park. On a lighter note, this is me and my husband paddleboarding down our street. I live on the river now, but I did not live on the river then. Okay, so that is, inland. And this is Jacksonville Chamber of Commerce. This is the downtown flooding. These pictures and the lived experiences of our families and neighbors during Irma spurred immediate past President Scott Wilson of City Council to form the Special Committee on Resiliency in late 2019. His goal was to bring together council members, local experts in resiliency, and local organizations and resources across Florida to analyze the city's current level of resiliency and chart a path forward. This past year, Council President Tommy Azzurri continued the special committee, and the chair position passed from Honorable Matt Carlucci to me. The committee was divided into 3 subcommittees to tackle. So there was a subcommittee on education and community outreach, environmental planning, and finally a subcommittee on infrastructure. Over a 12-month period, the subcommittees worked tirelessly and comprehensively, assessing the resilience of the city and developing recommendations with assistance from city departments and subject matter experts in the community and across the country. I want to acknowledge the work of my committee members, council members Matt Carlucci, he was the immediate past chair, Joyce Morgan, Michael Boylan, and Garrett Dennis, and their hard work on these subcommittees. We are blessed to live in a community with so many experts on resiliency. I would be remiss not to thank all the subject matter experts, including Barbara, who is on this call, and especially Brooks Andrews, Sean LaHave of the Northeast Florida Regional Council, the River Keepers, and United States Army Corps of Engineers. Now for the recommendations from each subcommittee. The Subcommittee on Education, Protection of Local Neighborhoods, and Community Outreach reported the greatest danger that Jacksonville faces is flooding, from the immediate threat posed by intense tropical storms to the steady increase in sea level that will come over the next years and decades as the climate warms. For Jacksonville, with our 1,000 miles of riverfront and oceanfront, resiliency begins with keeping water out of our neighborhoods. It's a multi-billion-dollar fight that will be waged over decades to protect the city from changing climate. The city will need to establish education and public engagement tools to reach diverse audiences and use a social justice and equity lens that will help change public discourse and resource allocations to be more inclusive of various populations, as well as address unfair or exclusionary practices by government. Education will be key for citizens. For example, there is a tool, the Regional Resiliency Exposure Tool by the Northeast Florida Regional Council, that allows demographic data overlaid on coastal and riverline flood risk layers to evaluate the vulnerabilities of low-income seniors and minority populations. This could be invaluable to homebuyers and community planners. We will need to coordinate with Duval County community organizations active in disaster coalitions of government emergency management, also partner with nonprofits and businesses to better align disaster services with resiliency strategies. We need to be on a clear path forward while acknowledging and accepting assistance from experts in the field. Moving on to the findings of the Infrastructure Subcommittee. The Infrastructure and Continuity of Operations for Essential Services Subcommittee reported the city will need to identify flood-prone areas where people and homes are the most vulnerable and recommend solutions to protect those areas. Currently, a seller or a landlord is not required to disclose legally in writing the fact that a property has previously flooded. The committee recommends this be required. Decision-making criteria should include examining how long people have been affected by the current situation. Similarly, it is useful to map the impact of an individual project as part of prioritizing projects, i.e., if we do this, how many residents will be positively affected? How will it positively affect property values, etc.? We need to encourage better private development practices with a broader long-term resilience vision in mind. Plant native trees to absorb stormwater runoff and examine how the North Florida Land Trust, as well as other entities, could potentially acquire land to provide flood storage capacity. The subcommittee reviewed practices to reinforce building roofs against the effects of hurricane winds and discussed the likely need for our city to update the building code. This committee moved to adopt the Adaptation Action Area, or the AAA Working Group recommendation. It identified areas vulnerable to coastal flooding and sea level rise using 4 factors: context, vulnerability assessment, adaptation strategies, and implementation strategies. The report's recommendations fell in 5 core areas. Number 1, education. 2, land development regulations. 3, economic and human resources. 4, interagency coordination. And 5, infrastructure. Recommendations included the number 1, creation of a resiliency office and officer. 2, vulnerability assessment, and revise the AAA boundary to include more territory, including the 500-year floodplain and the Category 3 storm surge zone, predicated on a 2-foot sea level rise by 2060. The committee moved the AAA recommendations and filed legislation, which is in the bill cycle now. The committee also recommended 2020-672, now enacted, which codifies the position of a Chief Resiliency Officer. This position was funded and is currently open for applications. The CRO will need to integrate stakeholders into the conversation, and is critical that representatives from the private sector, nonprofits, and civil society are included as Jacksonville Makers moves forward towards increasing resiliency. The city will be better equipped to operate for resiliency and putting resiliency into plans, policies, and other governmental activities if we are more inclusive in the conversation. This person will also act as a central clearinghouse for all information related to resilience in Duval County. Because as you know, what we're doing now is well, or gotten better. But as a government, we're all in different silos, if you will, and they weren't talking. And so resiliency wasn't being necessarily addressed, or was being addressed with this person, and the right hand and the left hand didn't know what they're doing. So the CRO is going to be able to cross all those various operations, and we come up with a master plan, if you will, on resiliency. And this will reduce redundancy, increase productivity, and save taxpayers' dollars. Next, we have the Subcommittee on Environmental Planning and their recommendations. They explored living shorelines, green infrastructure, wetland preservation, protection for the existing tree canopy, resiliency in the built environment ordinances, and planting more trees for stormwater and heat resilience, and other related topics. The Environmental Planning Subcommittee and subsequent observations were organized around 3 hazards. Number 1, sea level rise. 2, extreme precipitation events. And 3, mean heat increase. All these hazards were examined through the lens of land development and environmental justice. The subcommittee reported the need to create a green infrastructure action plan, reevaluate new septic tanks. Existing installed septic tanks are increasingly expected to fail due to sea level rise and increase the salinity. Failing septic tanks allow human waste and bacteria to contact humans and waterways and pose a threat to public health. They share the need to keep shorelines natural or free of fertilizer, pesticides, and herbicides, which erode shorelines and diminish their capacity to absorb water during weather events. The city has allowed for development on wetlands, and the subcommittee argues the encroachment of wetlands can degrade wetland function nearby and downstream long-term. Wetlands are natural protection and need to be preserved for the health of Jacksonville and the entire St. Johns River. They recommended a city-led program that selectively purchasing and protecting existing high-risk land to curb future flood claims. Open space and protected land will improve Jacksonville's CRS score, which reduces the cost of flooding insurance. This suggestion is being explored in such neighborhoods as Trout River area, and we just bought legislation just passed to buy property on the Knight Drive. I'm extremely proud of the recommendations that have come from these subcommittees. You can see how detailed they were. And let me tell you, I had 0 resiliency experience prior to coming on this. And now I, as I've told so many people, I don't see the world the same. It was life-changing for me. And I think it was for several people. This will not be without challenges, resiliency. We will need increased community education. Disaster preparedness and resilience are not often on the agendas of those who deal regularly with chronic conditions and crises such as poverty and crime and violence, serious illness and unemployment. Successful resilience building through private-public collaboration depends on the inclusion of the full fabric of the community. We will need multi-year funding commitments. Federal dollars are often dependent on extensive and lengthy studies. Infrastructure projects are very expensive. The city budget is developed anew every year. And finally, we will need prioritization by local government officials to make the investments and to take action now to protect Jacksonville long-term. What does this mean for you, for small businesses, for nonprofits, corporations, and citizens? It means security, both for personal and for your business and for your investments. A more resilient city and community incurs fewer disasters-related costs or losses when a disaster does strike. These frequently include, among other things, capital losses, deaths, and injuries resulting from the disaster, as well as business interruption costs, and what we've seen with this COVID pandemic. This in addition to the government-related costs for response and recovery, which includes costs for emergency response teams, emergency shelters, emergency evacuations, supplies like bottled water, it goes on and on. In addition, as the sea level rises, existing infrastructure, both private and public, will be at risk. Cities that have prepared and budgeted will be able to manage this change without drastic impacts to necessary services. Miami right now has done an excellent job with dealing with this issue. We will need your help, your support, and your voices to move forward. We've approved the report as a committee, and it's now right now being before the City Council as a resolution. I hope that you take the opportunity to read the report. It was, I thought, done exceptionally well. We had a lot of help from the Northeast Regional Council. And with that, I will be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thanks so much. I have one. Are you able to see the questions in the chat, Ms. DeFoor?
Let me see. Yes.
So there's
no, I don't see. Only thing no.
Okay.
I don't. No.
Well, let me read it to you then. It's a little lengthy. So
okay.
Here's the question. The city has committed funding to build out the Emerald Rail section to link sections of the near north and west sides to downtown and the river. However, the funding is such that private funds have to be raised and completing the trail will take many years. The Resiliency Committee's work was only about how to make our city more resilient in the face of climate change, or was not only about that, but also about what our city needs to do to mitigate climate change. Completing the Emerald Trail, which offers the opportunity for people to walk and bike to work and other recreational activities sooner than currently projected, would be a not insignificant contribution to reducing carbon emissions. Would Chairwoman DeFoor support using part of the gas tax proposed by Mayor Curry to improve transportation on completing the Emerald Trail sooner than currently projected?
You know, that's a great question. I don't because the gas tax is, they're restricted on what you can use it on. So I would have to do some research on that. I mean, I don't think you can put it on sidewalks, which I was originally told you could, and I was pretty happy about that, but now I've been told it can't. I think we need to do a better understanding of what this gas tax is going to bring.
Yeah.
I mean, I really do. I mean, I think we need an audit of where the money is currently going and an understanding of where this money will go. And in addition to that, there's a real trust issue we have right now in our community.
Mm-hmm.
We really have, you know, and rightfully so, when we had the issue with the JEA and then the Lot J,
Mm-hmm.
there's been lost a lot of trust. And I think, and before I think we need to work on regaining that trust and then determine, you know, personally, I don't think we should wait on the gas tax. I think if we can do a Lot J, why can't we do an Emerald Trail?
All right. Thank you. I noticed, I'm waiting for some more questions to come into the chat. You said something that really struck home for me about water levels not returning to pre-Irma conditions. I live near Goodbees Creek, and there's a bridge I always walk over where I see that. And people are always like, how can that be? How could it not have gone back down after, what, 3 or 4 years now? But that, you know, certainly will have an impact on future flooding, right, and future disasters.
Yeah. Well, I think we need to clean out their tributaries. There's a lot of silt that's, you know, we don't need to be building on wetlands. I mean, you know,
Right.
I hope we're going to start learning our lesson. I mean, you know, we build on these wetlands and then we wonder why they flood. I mean,
Right.
It's not hard to understand. There's so much we can do to better protect our community, and it could be a win-win. And I think the Emerald Trail is a great example of what a win-win looks like, right? If that can be used as resiliency, because you're cleaning out the tributaries as well, and it's a park and a pedestrian. To me, that's just a win-win. And to your point, why couldn't we? I mean, I think there's going to be a lot of federal funding opportunities on resiliency. We could use that as an example, you know, get federal funding for the Emerald Trail.
Yeah, that's a great point. What are some ways the league can help to get out the message about this report? I'm curious, are you being asked to speak to other groups? How aware of this report do you think the community is at this point?
I've talked to several groups. I've been on the radio a couple of times. I think certainly the more we talk about it, the better we can get the word out. Y'all have a very extensive reach. So I'm happy to, you know, if y'all could help with that, that would be wonderful.
Okay, great. We can plan to, you know, do some more social media posts apart from this event, driving people to that and include information. Got a couple more questions that have come in. Is it your understanding that dredging is going to make the flooding worse?
You know, that is such a great question. And I met with the Corps. I asked him point blank. They claim not. And so I don't have a clear, I've talked to Lisa from River Keepers. I'll be honest with you. I don't think it has as much of an impact as some of these other areas, such as building on wetlands. And I mean, we do need to clean out the tributary. I mean, we need to, you know,
Right.
So there's so many other issues that I think we could address right now that are the Rodman Dam. I would love to see that go. I think that I would like to that's a done deal. So let's focus on those things that we can make a difference.
Right. Yeah. Great. One of the attendees said that she sent a question directly to you. I don't know if you see one, but we'll see if you see that. And then I've got another one queued up.
Was it Francis Jones?
Yes, it was.
Okay. The projects proposed by Riverfront Parks now seem to afford maximum resiliency. What are your views on its possible success and being accepted by the City Council? I think there's probably going to be a difference of opinion as it relates to the Metropolitan Park. And let me talk to you about that a little bit.
Yeah.
So that is an 18-acre park, of which 14 acres are federally restricted. So there'll be no building on the 14 acres. What's being proposed today is on the kids park, which is 4 acres. And what they want to do there is do a hotel, a 4 Seasons hotel, along with some, you know, and then it's going to be part of the shipyards, and do some medical orthopedic. So they're building on a basically health tourism. So you see it in Birmingham, and you see it in other cities. And, you know, I think there's again, I'm a win-win kind of person. I think you can have, and if they do that, I think you can create an opportunity, because right now Metropolitan Park is not being utilized. It's why don't we take this opportunity and build the 14 acres to an incredible park that's resilient, and make it let's create a win-win now. I mean, I think they'll do that because Four Seasons is a brand, and they're not going to want to be next to anything but a top-rated park. It's just a thought.
Has there been conversation about expanding the Riverwalk to Metropolitan Park as part of resiliency and better use of the waterfront efforts?
You know, I have not heard that, but that is something that absolutely should take place. Absolutely. Great thought.
I think you may have hit on this earlier, but maybe you can say a little more. The question is whether you anticipate funding in the president's proposed infrastructure legislation that would be applicable to Jacksonville's resiliency needs.
We need to move. I mean, the only way to get funding and where the name with Jacksonville is, we got to get a congressman, you know, both Rutherford and Boston to fight for us. I mean, there's money to be gained, and we need to have a piece of it. I mean, yes, we can absolutely be a part of that now.
Great. Okay. So those opportunities already exist. Were either of our congressmen involved in y'all's efforts with the resiliency report, or have any comments after you shared it with them?
I did talk to Congressman Rutherford or his office, because I wanted to get on the water bill, which would have helped fund the Corps to do, you know, it's what's been done down in Miami, and they received like $4 billion federal funding if they go through with it. That's the kind of thing we've got to get in the queue, and the only way to get in the queue with federal funding is to get these reports done. So I have talked to Rutherford, and he said he would help us with that.
That's great news. In an earlier meeting, we heard from Nancy Powell about keeping the River Shore area clear and building behind that to manage flooding and making development available. The question is this part of your plan?
We have not been brought into those conversations. I like that plan. That's like St. Pete did that. I actually, the former mayor that brought that to fruition, and down in St. Pete, I met with Rick Baker is his name, and I toured it, and he told me exactly. I mean, I would love to see that. My understanding, is that that is not the plan of the DIA, and I think we need to make it the plan of the DIA.
All right, so advocacy with the DIA. League of Women Voters became a coalition partner with the Riverfront Parks Now efforts.
That's great.
So we're very supportive of that. I am not seeing any other questions in the chat right now. I think any other things you think we should know, or there are things that we can do as individual citizens, not just as the league, to help advocate for resiliency in our community?
I think you're doing it by having this lunch and learn and learning more about it. Some things that are in front of the city council right now, redistricting is one area that I'm sure you're going to get involved in. That once we get the census data, which is not until September, I filled you in on Metropolitan Park. I think y'all are up to speed. I don't know, Brooks, is there anything else you can think of? But we can't hear you.
Oh, I think you covered it.
Oh, okay.
And of course, we have a few more questions come in. You know how
Okay.
that always goes as you wrap up. Let me give those to you. So the group would like to hear more about how the removal of the Rodham Dam would benefit resiliency efforts, or your take on that, what we can expect to see there.
Oh, it would, first of all, it would vastly improve the health of the river, which that impacts everything. It's not in our county. So it's unfortunate. The feeling is that county thinks that the dam has caused them to have this big bass fishing, well, some sort of fishing.
Mhm.
But the reality is, according to Lisa Reineman, is that if they got rid of it, they would even increase it better. So it's just one of those deals where, to me, there's no reason why we still have it. None. We shouldn't have had it in the first place. And it hurts the river. It's injured the river.
There's a question about the final report being available, which is available on our website, and I'll try to grab that link and put it in the chat, or if you or Brooks have it handy and want to drop it in, that would be great. There's one other question about, you just mentioned that Metropolitan Park is underutilized. We're planning an event for there, I think in late April, and one of the participants asked, are you aware that that pavilion at Metro Park can't be reserved? If the park is underused, isn't that the fault of the mayor's office, is the question.
Well, that's a loaded question, but
it is a loaded question. So,
to be fair, I believe that a lot of what we're seeing has been pre-orchestrated. So what I mean by that is, all of a sudden we saw the removal of the music venue, which I loved. I absolutely loved going to Jazz Fest there. I loved going to Starry Nights,
right.
And then the boats could enjoy it. I thought it was a wonderful venue, but that also goes away, and then we get Daly's Place, and then we have the landing gone, and all of a sudden there's Lot J. So I'm not one. An FBI agent once told me there's no such thing as coincidence, and I think that's probably true. So I'll just leave it at that.
Fair enough. Okay, and we've got the link out, and we'll put it on our website. I think the other question was already addressed. So I'm gonna thank you very much for being here with us, and ask our Vice President Linda Mann to come on now. I think she has some remarks that she wants to make as well. Did we lose Linda? Nope, there she is. Let me make her a co-host, because it looks like she came out and went out and came back in. There you are.
Okay. Yeah, I couldn't talk. Randy, thank you so much. That was most interesting. And I know the league is very interested. That is one of our priorities, is the resiliency and climate change and all of that. So we will look forward to working with you in the future and keeping involved in this issue. I think it's a huge one. Just a few announcements before we end today. First of all, just to June 2nd is our chapter's annual meeting. We will vote on the budget, bylaws, and hold elections. So if you are interested in a position on the board or in a committee, please send an email to our LWVJFC@gmail.com, and we will have nominating committee contact you. Also look for an email inviting you to attend an outdoor event on April 25th at the Marina, where we will learn more about our partners, Riverfronts Parks Now. We're working to organize that, and there will be a link to sign up. Eventually, if you're coming, we will provide some snacks and sit in the park and look at what we've been talking about. Convention will be held virtually this year, June 4th and 5th. Registration will be online and will be announced via email. And our website, the state website, LWVFL.org, has been refreshed. So take some time to look at the new site as some things have moved around. We look forward to resuming our in-person luncheons in the near future, but want to ensure that we consider the safety and health of our members. And also just to remind you that our own Angela DeMondbran has been involved, one of our former presidents, has been involved in the resiliency efforts at the city. So we thank her for her involvement. That's all I have for today. So thank you again for attending. We look forward to seeing you next month.